so that they're aligning the government's roles with the interests of society this way, so that it is about helping produce productive change, not based on money and compensation alone. So for example, if you're a government official, you could be put in a position to be a university president of a major university. Then you must demonstrate during that time how you've improved that institution. Perhaps you've increased the number of foreign exchange programs to other universities around the world. Maybe the number of graduates from the university went up in terms of their ability to get high-paying jobs. So they get measured on the number of factors, and this happens throughout their entire career. So by the time they get considered to be a high-level official for the Politburo or the Standing Committee, they would have already served decades in their nation in various roles, showing that they have produced productive change and have benefited millions of Chinese. So many of these Chinese citizens then view that these people at the top have a collective wisdom, that they know what to do in terms of leading a nation, that they have selected the best people for the job. Now, how can we take that and incorporate it into the US? Because I'm obviously not advocating that someone must go through the ranks of government here to become president of the United States. But what I'm saying is that there are certain elements that make sense. I suggest in my book, why not introduce a competency test for policymakers here? Today, the only area where we provide these tests are to our foreign service, who become our ambassadors to other nations. But virtually every other agency doesn't require this. And our system today, where the saying, to victor go the spoils, is more true than ever. When President Obama or anybody else who becomes the head of state will have the plum book where they can appoint different high-level positions throughout government. These tend to go to people who are probably their high campaign donors or other people who they owe political favors. And this may not necessarily be in the public interest. For instance, President Bush had appointed Michael Brown to be head of FEMA during Hurricane Katrina. This guy had no emergency management experience whatsoever. And yet he was charged to run this thing, and we saw the results of what happened. So I am not suggesting we replace our systems, but perhaps we improve it. And another idea is a thought, well, maybe we should restrict the revolving door. Today, it's a well-known business model where someone can go get elected into Congress or work in a regulatory agency and then leave and go to the private sector, set up a shingle on K Street and become a lobbyist and earn millions of dollars that way. This sort of conflict of interest, again, can be very harmful to the public interest. Another idea I bring up is perhaps we should demand track records of people who want to seek higher office. This could be a great way to vet who is qualified, so that they have to have shown they've led an organization and have provided beneficial change, that they have shown that they have the moral compass to help society. Another major theme I want to talk about is the idea of having long-term visions. Because today, I really worry that our nation is suffering from a disease that I call short-termism. We have politicians who can really only think in terms of two-year election cycles. We have a lot of corporations who have to meet short-term profits demanded by Wall Street. I don't think there are enough people who are actually taking a step back and asking, where do we want to be in 10, 20 years' time? And how are we going to get there? So again, I turn to the Chinese system and say, where can we learn here? The Chinese have institutionalized something called the 5-year plans as a way to avoid the temptation to have short-term band-aids. I know a lot of folks have dismissed this idea because they associate 5-year plans with central planning of top-down and of the disasters under Mao. But what I'm suggesting today is that the way they practice 5-year plans now is very different from what happened then. Today, it is more of a goal-setting exercise where the government articulates their priorities of where they'd like to see the economy in the future. And therefore, they set performance targets associated with different areas of the economy. For instance, in their latest 5-year plan, 2011 to 2015, they articulate that they would like to see a greener economy. So how are they going to get there? They put specific performance targets, such as they want to reduce carbon emissions by 17% per GDP unit by the time they hit 2015. They want to increase energy efficiency in buildings by 16% per unit of GDP. And the people who are charged with making these changes will have the autonomy to come up with a variety of solutions that will help them get there, that incorporate the power of the private sector. So they will use a combination of carrots and sticks, such as tax hikes on high polluting industries, tax incentives for clean tech, and various other investments that will be very inviting for foreign companies in the US, in Europe, to come in and work jointly with the Chinese in order to come up with these solutions that will help them meet this target. Now, the closest thing the US has to this kind of top-down priority setting is the US federal budget. The OMB basically prepares this for the president that should reflect his spending priorities. And basically they make the allocations to the different agencies. The difference is that there are almost no performance targets associated with how we allocate our taxpayer money. It is the equivalent of a CEO having a strategic plan where he would hand over money to a department and not demanding that they produce any results as a result of having received that money. Now, if we have this situation, it is no wonder that our taxpayer money goes into all these agencies, and it's like a black hole where we don't see any results. After trillions of dollars of spending, we still have significant unemployment in this country. We are also the largest spender in healthcare, and yet we have some of the worst outcomes in healthcare of all developed nations. So perhaps if we borrow this idea of setting performance targets that the Chinese use, it might drive more transparency and more accountability in our government to help align what they're doing with the rest of society. I guess I'm running a little low on time, so maybe I'll just wrap up here for now, and then open it up to questions. And I understand there'll be book signing afterwards.